I tell people that in America, if America starts losing its standing in the world, if it becomes, if it doesn't work for most people, California will leave, Texas will leave, so many states will leave the
New
union.
York, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, they will leave the union. That California, they don't need America to survive. You know, if they leave, they will be the sixth largest economy in the world. So, what keeps any nation is if it's working for majority of the people. If there is still legitimate effort to make it a more perfect union. We have not started to define the union. I don't think the union in Nigeria is defined. Other countries are trying to make their union more perfect. Our own, we're yet resisting.
Because I remember that Chinua Achebe actually made that point that the Nigerian nation has not been founded. And Wole Soyinka, in a lecture at Harvard, which I attended, which is part of his book, The Open Soul of a Continent, made the point that there is no nation in this space. So there's a space that goes by the name of Nigeria, but there's no national spirit there, right? So,
no, before you go further, let me just say that this is how I look at it. I simply say that the ideals of Nigeria, they've not been tried and found wanting.
Yes,
they've been found difficult and left on track.
Yes.
Nobody wants to deal with that. But I would say let's take a break at this point. We did 1 hour. Just take a break.
Okay.
I know. It's so quick. Let's take a break. When we come back, we will continue the conversation. You lead, but let me just take a break because.
Are we back?
Yes.
We're back from the break.
Oh, okay. Let's take the real break.
No. That's fine. Okay, I was just surprised. Yeah, so it's a delight to be back. My name is Okey Ndibe. I have flipped roles with the usual host, Rudolph Okonkwo. So today I'm the host of the show, the visiting host, and Rudolph is our very, very revered guest. So, Rudolph, you and I were talking about the idea of Nigeria and how it's as you said, is a nation that has not been found wanting, but it's been found difficult. And
The
abandoned.
ideals, the
The
ideals of
ideas of the
Nigeria.
nations have not been found wanting, but have been found difficult and untried.
Yeah, left
Okay.
untried. Yeah.
So there's a question, therefore, and you had made a point earlier that, in your view, this sort of gradualist approach would not work.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
because it's going to take at this point perhaps centuries for Nigeria to
No, not
achieve.
not just that. Not just that. It may never happen
It
if
may
we
never
continue
happen.
this way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at
So,
it this
so
way.
even if we said that we were moving in a positive direction,
Yes.
at the rate that we're going, the a rate that is much slower than that of how do I of tortoise, maybe, that we're going to the nation is going to basically fall apart because it needs to catch up dramatically, so behind. And so what we find is a country that is not just behind the sort of the developed economies in the world, but behind neighbors like or compatriots like Ghana, like Kenya, like Uganda, Nigeria, on the indices that count, is so far behind, right?
Yeah.
So I remember that I've been asked the question on numerous occasions whether I believe in Nigeria, and my answer is that I don't believe um, in any collectivity as such, right? I don't believe in Nigeria, nor do I disbelieve. Okay, I think, like you, that Nigeria can achieve its promise, and it has tremendous promise. But clearly, the way the country is going is in the direction of more profound tragedy. Okay, so given that history, what would you say to young people who look at this history, or even not necessarily young people, older people who have had a wider span of the story of disappointment, of disillusionment? What would you say to them when they propose that the answer is Biafra or Duduwa or Arewa or the Niger Delta, Mend or something? What would you say to them?
I don't. A friend of mine would say, I don't begrudge them. I don't. I think. I think at this point, every every participant in the Nigerian process,
Mm-hmm.
everybody is needed.
Mm-hmm.
The people who are saying they are tired are playing their role.
Mm-hmm.
It's left for the people who still believe in Nigeria to prove them wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the civil rights movement, there were people who were saying we want to go back to Africa.
Mm-hmm.
There were people who were saying we want our own states in
Mm-hmm.
America. I'm talking about black people.
Mm-hmm.
There were people who were saying we want war. We
Mm-hmm.
don't want this non-violence
Mm-hmm.
thing that Martin Luther King was preaching.
Mm-hmm.
But they all came together to accomplish the goal.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that those who are frustrated and they want to leave, they are doing the natural thing.
Mm-hmm.
Things I can take, it doesn't mean other people can take it. So they're doing the natural thing. They've set out for themselves. So the same way, those who are saying we still believe in Nigeria, it's left for the people who believe in Nigeria to prove it to the people who are saying that. Once Nigeria starts working, the people who are saying they want to leave, they will want to, I think most of them will want to say, I'm going to stay.
Yes.
The
Yes.
reason why, if they are getting more audience, more people moving in their direction, is because more people are seeing reasons to think that a smaller unit may be the solution. This is I can debate both sides. I can tell you why I think a smaller unit. If the big one is not functioning, maybe we should go to the smaller unit because I don't like the idea that everybody's failing now. You know, the fact that both the northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest, they are failing. Like the person you said who was telling you what about the population of Uganda? They are very small. My comeback will have been if Nigeria is not functioning, if in, let's say, in Lagos State or even Ogun State, or one state in Nigeria, you have constant electricity, you have water, you have gas coming to people's home, you have good transportation, good road network, that would have been something different. You say there is hope that maybe one day Abia State will be like Ogun State. Maybe Calabar, one day Calabar will be like Ogun State. But it's the whole country that is failing at the same time. So the whole country of Nigeria, people are put inside the same project, same council flat. So maybe if we bring down the council, demolish it, and give people plots of land to build, maybe people will be able to enjoy nature space and live in a little bit better than being in that conflict zone in a building where the foundation is broken down, the beams are bad and everything. So that's an argument for that. So for people who are old, what I tell old people is that, round up your affairs. You are about to die. There's nothing you can do about the situation. This is not going to be resolved in 20 years, in 30 years, nothing, no matter what anybody does. Even if we have a revolution today, the issue about Nigeria cannot be resolved in 30 years. So if you're old and, just prepare your thing, talk to the young ones. It's the young ones that I have hope. When I look at them, I see that all these people you see in primary school without sandals, with roof that is leaking, maybe one of them will be the one that will say we have to change things.
So you have said that you don't think this process of, if there is a process, if there is a prospect,
there's no process yet.
Okay, so if there is a prospect of reclamation, of recuperation, you're saying that you see 30 years as even unrealistic in terms of the span, right?
If we start today.
But isn't it also possible? Because my argument has been that Nigeria has all this talent. Okay, when you listen to Nigerians in different sectors, I've listened to Nigerians who are in the energy sector, and they will tell you that providing regular uninterrupted power for Nigerians from different sources, the thermal, the solar, and so on and so forth, that is doable and is doable rather quickly if the political will is there, especially the political will to subvert what has become the entrenched interest of generator importers and sellers, right? But what you see is that those who are in office have dual loyalties. Some of them are involved in bringing in the generator. Some of them are invested, therefore, in the failure of every ambitious power project in the country. So they tell you that Nigerians can feed themselves with a targeted agricultural policy, and that we can have regular uninterrupted power in Nigeria, given the political will. So that's why I sort of feel that Nigeria is actually a solution that is rather so close but waiting to be activated, to be put in place by a leader who says, I want a different kind of legacy. Because, we tend to have leaders who count their success in terms of how much they were able to enrich themselves and their inner circle of family and friends, associates, and all. So that, because I know somebody, a relative who ran a company that he founded in Nigeria, had to give it up ultimately and go to work for somebody after 30 years of running this company. And this company at one point was doing well, paying his staff, well. Then they made a mistake to go and take a loan in dollars for a project that they got in Naira. And the rate of the dollar at the time they took it from the bank was very good. And then the value of the Naira plummeted. And they couldn't dig themselves out of the hole of paying off that loan. The project, so it's like you take $1 million contract, $1 million loan to do a project that was that would have given you $1 million, in profit. But then the project, the Naira got so devalued that the project became worth, $250,000. Okay. And still you had to repay the $1 million. So they fired half of their staff, then fired another half, and they started paying. They used to pay, I remember they called me to give a writing workshop to their staff, and they paid me handsomely. Suddenly they now pay every few months, they pay. And this guy was telling me that because of the equipment they had in their office, that they have 3 massive generators, which they ran round the clock. And he said what they paid their energy costs, that if they had regular power, said they will hire double the number of staff, and they would, okay. So that's why I'm saying that we can actually, my view is that Nigeria can actually dramatically come out of its morass if we had the political will. If somebody came to power and said, okay, my project is not to squander and to loot public resources, is to fix the country and let Nigerians remember me, sort of the name that Obasanjo had pretensions towards, the founder of modern Nigeria, So if he had done the power project with the almost $20 billion that he poured into the sector, which most of it stolen, right? So if he had been serious in that commitment, I think that Nigeria would be in a different place. So I'm wondering, therefore, why you think that even with a commitment that is still going to take more than 30 years for Nigeria to
you know what Peter Obi said before he became a presidential candidate? He said that Nigeria was a car with a knocked engine.
Mm-hmm.
And then he ended up wanting to become the president of the country.
Of the knocked engine.
Knocked engine, the driver. And I asked him that question. He tried to answer it by saying that you need somebody who will take it to the mechanic to fix the engine that is knocked. And so the problem with that, you mentioned Obasanjo and the power sector. That's a good example of where I talked about erosion, and I did soil science. Mm-hmm. Erosion, there is erosion happening, and you are trying to fix the road without fixing the erosion. Mm-hmm. The sites, the gully is everywhere, mm-hmm. and they are going to carry away whatever thing you are building on the road. So that's what happened with the power sector initiative by Obasanjo. Mm-hmm. You didn't deal with structural issues in the country that is responsible for endemic corruption, mm-hmm. that is responsible for lack of accountability, mm-hmm. lack of transparency. And you think you can fix a major sector without dealing with those things. Mm-hmm. Where you have corruption endemic, mm-hmm. there's no way that if you see police collecting money on the street and you are basically running a corrupt system, you think that you bring millions of dollars or billions and it won't seep out of the system. It will.
But let me speak to that, right?
Yeah.
And I'll tell a quick story. I was once in Ghana during the time when I was doing my Fulbright in 2001, 2002. So I went to Ghana for a conference, and I drove around the night with a friend of mine who is Nigerian, but lived in Ghana at the time. I think he's still there now. And so we were driving around at night from a restaurant to a club, and the police stopped us and asked a few questions and then waved us on. So I was saying to him that if it were Nigeria, they would insist on getting money. So he told me that the president at the time, either the president or a radio station, had set up a hotline where you call with reports of police corruption. So if the police took money from you, you call the radio station, say where it happened, describe the police officer, and that the police authorities were taking action. The police officer will be fired. Okay, so I think that your analysis is correct. That Obasanjo promised on his honor. I remember that he said on his honor, and I remember I felt sorry for my father-in-law because I was trying to tell him that Obasanjo had very little honor to speak of. But my father-in-law was very close to Obasanjo, and believed that he had, a storage of honor, and that he was going to call upon this to ensure that things were done right. But so I remember that when Obasanjo came to office and he made all the right noises about stopping corruption, or when Buhari came to office. In fact, Buhari's was more, I think, more poignant, particularly because I actually happened to be in Abuja, and I spoke to somebody who told me that the first 2 weeks when Buhari was in office, that if you arrived at the airport and you were trying to bribe customs, or you were trying to give money to a police, they would actually rebuke you and say, take it away from me, because they thought when Buhari came in and said, again, as a man who fought a war against indiscipline, war against corruption, they felt, okay, he's coming now to stop these things. He's going to jail all these ex-generals who have stolen Nigeria's money. That's what Nigerians believed, right? But very soon they found out that Buhari was like anybody else. And so we settled back in. So I think that the question of corruption in Nigeria can be quickly addressed, right? If the head of state says to the police, arrest anybody, okay, regardless of their station in society, if they've committed a crime, especially if they have been corrupt. So if there's a minister who is close to the president, and the minister, all the ministers see that the president is not stealing a dime, right? I don't think a minister will have the effrontery to steal. And if the minister is not stealing, he's not going to allow the permanent secretaries to steal. If the permanent secretary is not stealing, he's not going to let the people under him steal. So that, in a sense, the argument I'm making still is that if there's a political will, if somebody comes to office, okay, and says, I want to stop this rot, okay, I want to invest and
no, don't go far. Don't go far. You know why it's not going to happen?
Okay, tell me.
Let me give you an example. Someone like Tinubu. So for those who know Tinubu, for many years, even after he became, after his term as governor of Lagos State, when you go to Tinubu's house, you go home with a bag of money, giving money. Okay?
Yes.
There are people who knew what Tinubu did to become rich the way he is. Okay? Those people are still around him. People that were there when he was governor, they were still around him. So for him to transform himself and be this person that will say, I'm against corruption, you shouldn't do this. He has to, first of all, come out and say, oh, I did all these things.
Yes.
I'm a terrible person.
Yes.
I've changed.
Yes.
Now I'm a new person. If you knew me before, don't come near me to say, do what I used to do.
Yes.
If you don't do that, if I know that you drink kai kai, at night, and you pretend you don't drink kai kai, and you are shouting people should not drink, I know you drink kai kai. I'll come to you. I say, forget them. Let's go and drink kai kai. So it's not going to work with these people. So you have to. There has to be a big court. Apart from the fact that it will be difficult if you are known to be straight person to get in there first. I'm saying damaged good like Tinubus or Basanjo, who, if they want to transform, they have to have a big break from their past. And then the other problem will be, where would they find the people that will uphold that new integrity? And remember that because of what they did in the past, they have to bring around them people they trust, people who knew, people who will not go and talk. It's complex. It doesn't happen.
So in other words, you say that we're doomed.
Doomed, yeah. Okay. So, unless something else. Okay.
So if that's your argument that we're doomed, I would then propose that the answer must be that we try something we've not tried up to now, which is balkanization. That you split Nigeria into. Basically, because my argument is that any community that wants to be its own autonomous, discrete community should have and can hold a plebiscite, should be able to be on its own and create its own nation. Because some people think that Nigeria is going to be divided into an Igbo state, a Hausa state, and a Yoruba state. And I tell them Nigeria has, some people quote 250 ethnic groups. It hasn't made sense to me, even though some ethno-linguists are saying it's closer to 400. So how can you be fewer than 200 million or 200 million people, and then you have 400 ethnic languages and so on, so it must be that there are languages that are spoken only by a few hundred. But it seems to me, therefore, that you, Rudolph Okonkwo, and I know that you've had a running battle with some Biafran agitators because they feel that you should come out and announce your support, and you haven't quite done that. So you should. It should follow that if Nigeria is irredeemable, which is your argument, that we should try a retreat into our ethnic.
Remember what Ojukwu said. Let me see if I can remember the exact quote, which is that Nigeria is like the Ottoman Empire, and we are told to sacrifice ourselves to the integrity of this ramshackled something. So the point I'm making, I'm not there. I'm not where I'm saying that, because I'm not where I'm saying that there's still another option, which we don't know if anybody is working on it. Okay. Remember what I said, that the ideals of Nigeria, they've not been tried and found wanting. They've been found difficult and left untried. What you suggested is what I said. If you're looking at the political actors we have now, hoping that redemption will come through them, I'm saying no, it's not going to come through them. The other option is whether there's space for different characters to get there. You can say that Obi could not even get there. Obi is one of them, but a little bit better than them. But they
well, he was adopted by the youth of the country.
But it's
as I said to the youth, if you were able to deliver the presidency to Obi, and that was one occasion where I was profoundly misunderstood, and I still am misunderstood by a lot of people. People felt that when Obi was governor of Anambra State, I was critical of him, which I was.
Yeah, we were.
And that Obi was now running for the presidency, and I began to champion him. All I said, which I stand by, was that if you watch that campaign, Obi came across as the most prepared person. Obi was a person who seemed to think at all. So Atiku was in there. Okay, Northerners should put him there. And then Tinubu was the Miloko thing, is my turn, and so on. And the fact that Tinubu refused to debate, and he went to Chatham House and became a distributor of questions, so that he couldn't even take questions. That at campaign stops, he had somebody behind him who was sort of a kind of marionette telling him what he was going to repeat, was very disturbing. So if anybody found that impressive, that shocks me. So all I said was that Obi, in terms of being a vibrant candidate, in terms of engaging for Ireland, I'm going to come to that, because I think that you've got into trouble with him and with some other politicians. So I'm going to come to that in a moment. But so I felt that Obi was the person who seemed to have thought in any profound way about the problems of Nigeria. So that's one thing that counted for him. The other thing that counted for him was that young people, for whatever reason, had adopted him as the person who symbolized their quest for change in the country. And as I said in several columns and in my podcast at the time, that if young people deliver the presidency to Obi, they should insist not on being in the corridors of power, but being in the very room of power. As I said, if you left Obi alone, he could do deals with the people you wanted out of power. So, but, trust Nigerians. Some people felt that I had fallen prey to ethnic sentiments or whatever. And they've had, they've had their say. And so on, and continue to have it from time to time. But then, in the end, I think, Obi didn't make it. I think that election still leaves a lot to be desired, because we had a process that was supposed to be sacrosanct and was supposed to be fraud-proof. And we saw that Nigerians are capable of making anything susceptible to fraud, however much of fraud-proof technology you hand them. They'll find a way. So who knows what happened? I would have wanted to get a real measure. And my sense is, there are people who believe that Obi won the 2023 elections. My own take is that perhaps if the elections had been more credible, that there might have been a runoff. The two candidates who participated in that runoff, I'm not sure about. But I don't think that Tinubu won the election legitimately, credibly. I don't know what your take is on that question.
Yeah. Let me clarify one thing. During the national conferences we've had in the past, they've tried to isolate certain groups from being part of it, especially the people they think are separatists, not being part of that conversation, which I think is wrong. I think everybody should go there and have their say. But this is what has been going on. If you go back to Jonathan, when we had the last one till today, the conference is happening. I mean, the separatists are having their say. Their voices are loud in the northern part of the country. You have different groups now coming up from Sokoto to Borno. Everywhere is in disarray in the country. So what we are trying to avoid, the breakdown of the country, breakup of the country, is already happening. there's a new trend in the north. You may not be aware of this, that the Hausa people are revolting against the Fulani people that came to their region. This is something that wasn't on the surface before, but it's now on the surface all across most part of the northern part of the country. So there is this breakdown. The country is already breaking down to the lowest level that is possible. The question is, can somebody come and put it back together, or will it become impossible to put together again? That's where we are. And it's the job of those who believe in one Nigeria and the ideals or the prospects of that one Nigeria to put their acts together and show people, because you will soon have another generation of people growing up believing that there is no hope in that one Nigeria because of failure of successive leaders who are architects of that one Nigeria. We don't see it now, but that's what's going on. There are kids in the southeast, kids in the southwest, who are thinking that this may be the solution, the way out. Yeah.
So let's sort of speak to some troubling events that have happened recently in Nigeria. It looks like the country discovers new ways, new levels of failure, of disaster. So Christmas period, some people came up with the idea to distribute scholarships, to distribute money. Some people came up with the idea to offer rice to what's called the less privileged, or the less fortunate, as we say in Nigeria. Instead of which this ostensible act of philanthropy yields just, unspeakable levels of tragedy, with deaths running into dozens in different parts of the country. What does this speak? What does this say about the place of Nigeria today? That Nigerians are losing their lives, a country that is an oil-producing country, a country that in the 1960s was projected by many to be the hope of an emergent mid-level economic and political power in the world, that we now have Nigerians stampeding and dying for rice that's donated by some people. How do you respond to this level of
desperation? It's desperation. They asked that question to the president, Tinubus, and he gave a rambling answer that was quite unfortunate. I will do the same thing he did. I will ramble, but it's desperation. And this is I've analyzed this in so many ways. I part of the people I blame, apart from the failure of the government, which is at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level, we have this idea that we're exceptional, that somehow we can follow best practices seen all over the world, and that maybe God or Allah will protect us from the consequences of not doing that. That's what we're seeing. The fact that we do things, we say anyhow, somehow we will get through. Everything will be okay. We're beginning to see it's not going to be okay. Okay, the president was the one who said to I think to Peter Obi, now statistics will go chop, which means that setting the tone that we don't care about statistics, but everything boils down to statistics. Everything. So the economy was going down, inflation was high, exchange rate was high, a lot of people are falling into poverty. We don't know how many. We don't care. We don't care about statistics. But if we had social scientists who are doing their job, they would have been telling us that the number of people who are getting poorer are more than what is sustainable in a society. So if you want to do a giveaway of whatever you want to do for Christmas, and you normally, because these people, most of them do this every year. So it's not like they've not been doing it. But because nobody alerted them that the pressure on people is a lot, that people who were not interested in coming before or had options, they have no other option but to go. And it was impossible to manage. So in a certain level, this is what I tell people now. I said, there's no need lamenting that the government has failed. We know that. The question is, what are we going to do as individuals, as citizens, on our own? What are we going to do? Since we can't even reform the government, because that seems to be impossible too, for people to demand transparency, accountability. The other question is, what are we going to do to improve the situation? That's really my message going into the new year. I'm saying to people, think of what you can do. One small thing you can do.
Yes.
It could be decide that you will gather information. I give this common example I always give about drunk drivers in America killing people. It took parents who lost children to come together and become a lobbying force. They forced the lawmakers across states, local councils, to pass laws. And they made sure that police, prosecutors are making sure that these laws are, people are punished for being drunk. It transformed the society. If you are living in a society where everything is failing, the government is failing, if the people also fail to step up and do the one they can do, and people are doing it, I'm not saying that we're not, people are doing it in different ways. For instance, most schools in the Southeast, I don't know about Amobia, but where I come from, people are the one, they are the people contributing money, fixing schools. People are building roads where I come from in my hometown because the government is not doing the job.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's the ideal thing. I'm not saying they shouldn't hold the government accountable, but while we're waiting to figure out how to even get them to pay attention to us, the ones that people can do, they should be able to do that.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's part of what baffles me though is that we see the absolute cluelessness. You spoke about Tinubus press conference, which media chat, which I haven't had the ill luck of watching.
Oh, you will. I will show you a little bit of that soon.
But what shocks me, because this is not the first time, you know, I remember when Obasanjo was president, that there was an explosion in a munitions factory in Lagos, military barracks, and dozens and dozens of people died, some of them by jumping into a swamp in desperation. And so Obasanjo showed up. And of course, the people who were just beside themselves with grief, who were looking for their loved ones and so on, heckled him a bit. And he just spoke to them dismissively and said, I don't have to be here. You know, so it's almost as if he'd done a favor to the people by showing up. So you find a Tinubu who doesn't seem to understand, according to you, the enormity, the gravity of what's transpired in his country, with people dying in a desperate dash for rice. Okay, which it always it's not amusing because I don't find tragedy amusing, but rice has little or no nutritional value, and yet that's what people give to Nigerians at Christmas. so people eat rice and put palm oil on it. No nutrition, but they down it. It just fills your stomach, and there's nothing nutritious about it. Okay. But what baffles me, to get to my point, is that the more governments or leaders in Nigeria, I always feel, self-conscious when I use that word in relation to Nigerian politicians. When I call them leaders, they are rulers, more like it. The more they show a disconnect, profound disconnect from the plight of the people whose lives they run and ruin, it looks like it's the more they ensure that they return to the centers of power, or that people like themselves who are cut from the same cloth of visionlessness, of viciousness, of corruption, that they are self-selected back into power. Okay. So you look at somebody like Bello, the governor of Kogi State, who was wanted by the EFCC, and he was, he paid school fees, into the future for his children at the American International School, which my kids attended when we were Fulbright scholars. So you are the governor. It is within your purview to set up schools at work where your kids could have gone. But no, you don't do that. You take the resources of the state to pay for your kids. Why is it that the more they do these things, the more Nigerians select people like that to return to power? Like when you find somebody who is halfway decent in terms of vision, but who doesn't have the resources, the money with which to bribe voters, that Nigerians frequently would dismiss such candidates and invoke the kind of language that Tinubu invoked, which is na statistics we go chop. Sometimes they say na grammar we go chop. A kind of valorization of ignorance. So they celebrate the ignorant, and then they put down those, with ideas of how to order society. Why is that?
People are jaded. If you look at the statistics from last election, how many people participated?
Mm-hmm.
How many people registered to vote? I think there were about 90-something million people registered.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think 50, maybe, I don't know if 50% of them collected their cards.
Mm-hmm.
The people that voted, I think it was, I'm not totally sure, about 30-something million out of 90-something. So you find out that people don't even believe. And it's going to be worse next election if the last one did not show them any sign that something has changed. The next one will be worse, because most people will not want to be part of it. And people are beginning to say that unless something is reformed, there is no reason why they want to be part of it. So what you find out is that the people who participate are people who want to be like these people who are in charge. So they are the ones who are eager to participate. The other people already wrote it off that there is no need to participate because nothing is going to change. That the people they want to vote for, either they will not give them the votes, even if they vote for them, or something else. So they have no reason to participate. Let me play you just 2 minutes of the video of the president, the presidential chat, and you tell me what you make of this.
Okay.
Fighting corruption a priority for you? If it is, what are the areas that you're looking at?
Corruption in all ramifications is bad for the people. First of all, pay enough attention to the causes Why are the people corrupt at all? The lack of social amenities, the lack of needs in some areas, lack of funding for their children's education. There are so many anti-corruption mechanisms that you can put in place that will help the people not to be corrupt. Pay them good and living wages. I have moved from 35,000 to 70,000. To me, that's anti-corruption. And if I can earn more, I'm giving more money to the state and local government level. I've been transparent with my earnings. Every month there is a publication as to how much this country is making.
But Mr. President, it doesn't address grand corruption. There's petty corruption and there's grand corruption. Only recently, the EFCC, published the fact that one person owns 735 houses in Abuja alone. One person.
And we got it. You don't know how long it has started. He did fantastic infrastructure. He had.
All right, that is your president. Now, this is what he said, and people might run away with it thinking that it made sense. He increased the pay of less than 1 million people, because when they say they increase workers' pay, you would think that it's everybody who works in Nigeria that gets that increase. No, it was just 700 and something federal employees that they increased the pay. So from 35 to 70,000. When Buhari was in power, so before he did his exchange rate and removal of subsidy, that 35,000 can buy you a bag of rice.
Yeah.
Now,
a lot more.
Now the 70, he increased it to
cannot buy
one bag of rice. But he just says it that way, that he increased their pay. He says that the state governments are getting more money now under him than before. But that money they are getting, if you put it in
a lot less.
Is worth less. But this is something he says. And if you listen to every bit of what he was saying, you will just know there is no hope. That they told him that somebody built, the EFCC got
700 houses.
And he said, we got it, that it now belongs to the government. He did not care. How is it possible that somebody will do this in a country? He did not care. He didn't tell us who the person
but precisely. So because that's the thing about Nigeria, the lack of transparency. He just spoke about him being transparent. In a transparent system, that person who has those homes will be undergoing a court. First of all, the government should not seize the property without a trial, right?
Yeah.
But what happens is the EFCC moves in, issues a press release. We have seized property of 700 by somebody. We don't know who that person is. Before you know it, those currently in office will then get those houses allocated to them. And even the person who built them originally will get some of them back if he sends the right delegations or if he goes to see the president. Okay? So you don't have what we call the rule of law. Okay? And I had mentioned earlier to you, there was some video that I saw today on one of the WhatsApp apps, that WhatsApp groups that I belong to, of a young woman from Anambra State who told a very heartrending story of her brother who was at a party, and somebody called the police and said they were making noise. And the police came and rounded them up, took them to Ajali police station. His mother went to the police station, and And the police said, "Oh, you can't bail your son because you're a woman. Women are not allowed to bail." So she called her brother, the young man's cousin, uncle, to come. As he was on his way, the Ajali police station said they had received instructions to move them to SARS Okozo. And SARS Okozo was a notorious killing ground for any person who was just arrested. They were wasted by this somebody Nwafo, James Nwafo or something, the police officer in charge. And so the woman, placed an urgent call to her husband and said, "Listen, you have to rush to the SARS station in Okozo." The man got there. The police said, "No, we don't have any such person." And they were there when their son and the three other young men were brought in. So the woman said, "That's our son, that's our son." And the wife told them to leave, and send them away. The next day they went back, and the sergeant or Nwafo told them that he had killed the young man, but he killed him. And some people told the father, maybe he's just bluffing, maybe he wants you to give him money. So the man sold a parcel of land and took 3 million naira in a plastic bag to go give the man. And the man said, "This money is nothing, it's too small. But at any rate, even if you brought more money, I've killed the young man." And nothing has happened to this police officer. He's retired. I think there was actually a point where he was rehired by the Anambra State government to do private security for them, until there was an outcry. But this young woman, she's gone to the National Assembly, the National House of Reps or something has held hearings. They've called the police, and the police will say, "Oh, we don't have our petition," even though she says she's written more than a dozen petitions to the police. And watching a young woman, she was a teenager at the point her brother went missing. She said 12 years ago now. And watching it, it brought me to such profound despair about Nigeria, that we had a killing operation. I remember many years ago, I wrote a column called Murder Incorporated, when an international human rights organization came out with a report about extrajudicial executions by the Nigerian police, that people are just arrested. And there's a young man from my town who was held in detention by the police for some weeks. And when he came out, he spoke to me about his harrowing experience. He said that his wife had to come every day to bribe the police, because he said when more people were brought to the detention center, there was no room to keep them. And he said what the police would do is that they would select a few people who were not producing money, take them to the back of and just shoot them and kill them. So you see that every sector of Nigeria is pathological, is diseased. The police that are supposed to stop crime are the greatest manufacturers of crime. So how do we even begin to address all of this? Is it even possible?
Yeah,
so I told you when you asked to interview me, I said to you, I no longer understand Nigeria. I've stopped writing about Nigeria. I've stopped following much of Nigeria. And it is that level that at every